Hello and welcome to the campground training on terrestrial invasive plants hosted by the Adirondack Park Invasive Plant Program. In this training we're just going to go a little bit over invasive species prevention, identification, and how to report them if you find them. But what are some of the pathways for invasive species to spread? For terrestrial invasive species, soil can carry seeds and other plant material like stems or roots. And you can see on the left side here, this soil can get stuck in your gear like your boots or your tires. Seeds can also be picked up on clothing or on your pets. So this is something to keep in mind when you're recreating. When you're hiking or biking or just traveling, make sure to use boot brush stations if they're available, and be sure to clean off any visible mud or seeds from your gear, your pets, and yourself. Campgrounds specifically are an area of concern because people are often traveling from out of state or across the state, and so this is an easy way for invasive species to be spread long distances. While you're working in campgrounds, you can remind park patrons of the simple ways that they can reduce the spread of these invasive species. Here are some of the species we are concerned about in the Adirondack area. Today we are going to be looking at garlic mustard, purple loosestrife, and tree of heaven. And then we're also going to touch a little bit about knotweed and Phragmites. Garlic mustard. This one is a fairly common one in the campgrounds. It has a 2-year life cycle. The first year it's pretty short, and then in the second year it can grow up to 4 feet tall. And these are generally found in the forest understory. So as I mentioned, it has a 2-year life cycle. On the left here are the rosettes of the first year. They're kind of kidney-shaped leaves with sharply toothed edges, and they grow in clusters. In the second year, they will shoot up, and the leaves look very similar, but they get kind of more triangular. And true to their name, when you crush the leaves, they smell like garlic. These have small white flowers with 4 petals, and these are pretty early bloomers. They come out in the spring, late May, early June. And then once they have gone to seed, they produce a lot of tiny seeds in these spikes that you can see on the right-hand side. So what are some maintenance best management practices for garlic mustard? This species should be cut or mowed or hopefully removed before flowering if possible. So best case would be to remove it during that first year while it's in the rosette stage before it ever gets a chance to go to flower, but you can also remove it during the second year while it's in flower to prevent it from going to seed. So because this species really does produce a large number of seeds, it should not be mowed or managed while it's in seed, so around late June, July, because this would just further facilitate the spread of seeds. Thankfully, this species is pretty easy to remove. You don't need any tools. You can just pull up the roots, place it in a black trash bag, leave it in the sun for about 2 weeks, and then dispose of it in a landfill. And this whole process is called solarizing. It will kind of liquefy the plants to render them non-viable. Another species we see in campgrounds is purple loosestrife. This one is really characterized by their bright pink magenta-y flowers. And these ones like to have a wet habitat, so they might be in a wetland or on the edges of a lake or a stream. The leaves of this species can be opposite, or they can grow in whorls of 3, like in this photo. They are lance-shaped with smooth edges. Some of the leaves can clasp the stem, or they might have a small petiole. The leaf veins, you can see in one of the leaves in the back, the leaf veins don't reach the edge of the leaf. They kind of go out and then follow up to the tip of the leaf. A distinguishing characteristic of the species is the square stem. You can pick up a stem and roll it between your fingers, and you'll be able to feel that there are edges rather than being round and smooth. And this will help you distinguish it from milkweed, which often looks similar without any flowers. One thing to keep in mind about the stem is that plants in the mint family will also have a square stem, so you'll have to look for some of those other identifying features like the leaves and the flowers. And this plant will persist throughout the winter, so you can still identify it in the winter if you know what to look for. The plant on the right here is one that has gone to seed, is persisting through the winter, and then in the following growing season, new plants will sprout out from the roots. So those characteristic flowers, they are showy, purple, magenta, pink, and they are easily identifiable. You'll often see them along the roadside from July to September. The individual flowers have 5 to 7 petals, and they grow in these tall spikes. And one thing to keep in mind with these is that in the Adirondacks we do have biocontrol present. There are 2 species of Galarusella beetles that feed and reproduce on purple loosestrife, and their feeding creates these windows in the leaves, which prevents the plant from getting enough energy to grow and put out flowers. So if you see evidence of these beetles, or you see the beetles themselves, the plants should not be managed. You can see the beetles on the left here, and on the right, the little white dots are their eggs. So some maintenance BMPs for purple loosestrife. This species does spread through fragmentation, so it should not be mowed, and it should definitely not be mowed while it's in seed during late summer, because they're another species that will produce a large number of seeds. If you have biocontrol present, or you have a little bit of a larger population and you see that it's going to flower, you can remove the flower heads. Or if you have just a plant here or there, you can dig them up by the root system and solarize them like you would the garlic mustard. These ones are a little more difficult to dig up, so you have to be sure to get the whole root system. A species we're concerned about in the Adirondack Park is Tree of Heaven. This is a tree that's capable of growing to 80 feet high, and not only is this species invasive, but it is also host to spotted lanternfly, which is an invasive insect. One way to identify this species is by looking at the leaves. They will have alternate compound leaves with between 10 and as many as 41 leaflets. So if we look on the left side, each of these sort of branches is actually one big leaf. And then if you zoom in on the right side, each leaflet has smooth edges that will distinguish it from our native staghorn sumac with toothed edges. Tree of Heaven has smooth edges, but they will have these glandular teeth at the base. That's the thumb shape you see at the bottom of each leaflet. And this is where the smell is produced. When you crush up the leaves, they kind of smell like old peanut butter. You can also look at the bark. This will help you distinguish the species from our walnut or butternut trees. The bark kind of looks like cantaloupe skin. And then during the summer, you can really identify the species by the fruit. They produce a single-winged, bright red-orange samara. And they grow in large clusters, and they really produce a lot of these clusters, so you can see this tree from afar. Some maintenance BMPs for Tree of Heaven. This species will produce a lot of root sprouts if it's cut down, so really herbicides should be used in order to minimize resprouting. But if you have just a very small sapling, you can dig it up by the roots and solarize it. Two species that are common throughout the Adirondack Park but are a little bit more difficult to manage are knotweed and Phragmites, or common reed grass. Both of these species spread through fragmentation, so they should not be mowed. If you have just individual plants, you can dig them up, but you have to be sure to remove the entire rhizome system because these really spread quite far horizontally. And then if you do remove them, they should be solarized. Because these species are so difficult to manage mechanically, they are best treated with herbicide. If you happen to find any of these species or any other invasive species, you can report them to iMap Invasives and just create an observation. You can download the app through Google Play or the App Store, and you can go to their website to sign up for an account if you don't already have one. Here are some links that might be helpful. The first one here is to create an iMap account if you don't already have one. And New York State also has their own iMap Invasives homepage. The third one here, we have a wonderful resource from New York Natural Heritage Program. They have a great help page for any questions you might have about iMap. And then of course our website for APIP, adkinvasives.com. You can find a full list of invasive species in the Adirondack Park. And since you're in campgrounds, if you're curious about what has been found at your campground in the past, we do have those reports on our website as well. And then at the bottom here, there is a booklet full of more information about both terrestrial and aquatic invasive plants. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was informative, and I hope you have a wonderful season at the campgrounds.